Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. In Germany, almost a third of the companies are still planning or discussing whether or how they can migrate their workloads to a public cloud. That is astonishing considering the undeniable advantages of the public cloud, especially when provided by a hyperscaler. We will come back to these in a moment. But first of all, we want to talk today about the how and not the why. My guest today will show you how you can easily migrate your workloads to the cloud of a hyperscaler like AWS without long lead times or high upfront costs. Please give a warm welcome to the speakers of today. They are Stephen Porter. He is Cloud Solution Strategist at VMware. Stephen is working for the global cloud practice supporting the partner community with a focus on multi-cloud and resilience. Good morning, Stephen. Good to see you. Hi.
Hi.
I couldn't hear you. Could you please
Sorry.
some words? So yeah, it's fine now. Okay, thank you. The second speaker of today is Jaroslav Hamacek. He is lead architect in the product management team for T-Systems VMware Center of Excellence, and he develops and maintains multi-tenant cloud platforms and helps customers to develop robust and secure products. Hi, Jaroslav.
Hello. Thanks.
How are you today?
Thanks. Good.
Good, great. Before we start with the presentations, the audience, we want to answer a question. Where do you see the main advantages of moving workloads to the public cloud of a hyperscaler? We prepared a poll for that is displayed now. Of course, you can ask also questions to us. You will find the respective input field in the webcast console. We plan the Q&A session towards the end of the show, so please be patient if we don't answer your questions immediately. We will certainly get back to them later. You can also download the presentations of today together with additional information material. You will find it also at the console. Finally, you can view this webcast later again. It will be provided to you as an on-demand version in the next days. Stephen, when companies consider migrating workloads to the cloud, who is the driving force? Is it the management? Is it finance? Or is it actually IT?
It can vary tremendously. So in many cases, it's management who have attended a session or an analyst like this one. And what they hear from the hyperscalers is obviously predicated on, well, historically it would have been cost, but these days artificial intelligence is driving a lot of conversation. So normally the board have a perspective, and then they encourage IT to kind of explore more and start moving workloads if possible.
Is finance more reluctant to this topic because they fear loss of cost structures of the guidance of governance like that?
Yeah. For many organizations, that move from a capex where they know the investment, they know how long the duration is going to last, to an opex model where costs can go up and go down is very challenging for the finance community, and therefore they have to plan and they have to put other processes and systems in place to support that evolution. So there is a topic called FinOps, which is starting to come to the fore now, where you enable staff to utilize the public cloud, but you inform them of the costs that they're going to incur, how they can make decisions on whether to use a small or a large VM. And therefore, there's a lot of activity around a hyperscaler deployment, which should help a customer get the most value from it, but from a finance committee understand how the costs are going to evolve over the month or over a period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I had a conversation with an analyst from IDC recently, and he told me also that FinOps is one of the main topics in the future concerning the successful migration to the cloud, because as you said, the financial planning, the financial structure is completely different from the old CapEx model.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the results of the poll. We see that flexibility is the main reason our audience wants to migrate or is migrating to the cloud as main advantage they see in the cloud, followed by higher availability, and cost savings and better security are on par on number 3. Stephen, in the talk before, you said cost savings is very often one of the main reasons or the main points that are brought forward. Our audience obviously has a different view. Do you agree with them?
I certainly agree with them. So, cost was, one of those early kind of indicators of people wanting to move to the cloud. But more modern approaches have certainly recognized that agility, value, flexibility, because a lot of people historically are used to kind of spending on a new platform and then having to kind of wait for that to depreciate over 3 years. So, there is a lot of complexity in that approach, whereas understanding that they can start something quickly, use it for a period of time, and then turn it off is a much more modern approach. But the IT environment has to be able to take advantage of that and support that evolution in flexible consumption.
Jaroslav, how do you see the topic of security? 41% said better security is one of the advantages, but I have I think a lot of customers don't understand security in the cloud very well, because they think, okay, I can shift it. I shift everything to the cloud provider, and I don't have to care about it anymore. Do you see this as well, Jaroslav?
Yeah, well, security begins with the application and each customer itself to protect. However, it's in the cloud. In these days, it's not a problem to achieve high security in a hyperscaler cloud as well. There are much more options how to secure the environment, as for example, when it's running in the server room, somewhere in the offices with public IP address. And it's very hard to afford that great level of security in on-premise environment. You would have to invest a lot into appliances, whereas in the cloud, it's more at your fingertips. The possibilities, you can consume it, let's say, on per slice level or per usage, and you can achieve a higher level of the security. Of course, it needs some effort to spend, and it's great if you know your application, then you can secure it better.
Okay, so it's true. It's better. You can achieve better security in the cloud. It's a real advantage. Thank you, Jaroslav. I suggest that Stephen, you could start with your presentation.
That's brilliant. Thank you. So one of the things that when I talk to customers and partners, they often think it's a binary choice between an on-premise environment and a hyperscaler environment. And there's a lot of effort that goes into either consolidating one or other. But the reality is that the application, and we spoke about the application a moment ago, should drive that conversation. And for some, they don't realize how much they use the hyperscaler, the public cloud environment already. So if you think about things like email, you're in a Microsoft Azure environment in many cases using M365. If you think about some of those common applications that are starting to come to the fore, things like Salesforce or Workday, then you're going to be in a hyperscaler environment. Whereas those traditional applications that run the business, the Oracle, the SQL Server, are going to be an on-premise conversation. And then you've got those brand new applications, the ones that are really going to change the customer experience, the Ubers, the Netflix, those kind of organizations. So the reality is that although you may be thinking it's a binary choice, it's about being cloud smart and using the right platform for the right application. And the reality is that you are going to end up being a multi-cloud organization.
Stephen, how do you rate the topic you already mentioned, it, artificial intelligence? There are a lot of services offered by public cloud providers on the one hand. On the other hand, there are often sensible data used for training or for using these AI models. Is this something for a hybrid environment, or what do you think is the right choice there?
It's a great question, and it's one where I think, again, a lot of people think it's a binary choice where you're using hyperscaler services. But you've highlighted on that security question and the current kind of discussion that hybrid is a much better approach. So I'm actually writing a white paper on that topic right now about how you can use hyperscaler services to perhaps start to investigate and learn how to build a Gen AI model, how to build a machine learning model. But rather than running it in the hyperscaler environment and using your data and exposing that to the internet, you can bring the model back on premise and train it with your organization's data, your kind of crown jewels. And therefore you have the best of both worlds. You've got the flexibility of using the hyperscaler to learn, to build, and to get the model working correctly. And then you can train it with your organization's data and deliver it from an on-premise environment. So, you've got the ability of using both platforms.
Okay. Thank you.
So, when we think about that migration and the move, on-premise, we're thinking about investment in computers, in platform. We're thinking about how we've always done things. To give you an insight, I used to work in operations. I used to run applications for the organization I worked for. And I got used to that kind of 18, 24-month development process. But now working for VMware and working with customers and partners, I see the power and the value of the public cloud, the elasticity, the ability to automate and have IT as code and that agility. So the big challenge that you as customers face, and certainly we work with partners to help them address it, is that idea of workload migration. How can we take a workload that's been running for many years in that on-premise environment and move it across to the hyperscaler? Often people think that's a process where you have to change things. You have to change the application. You have to re-engineer it for the new world. And that throws up challenges. The other opportunity and a value of this migration and this movement is that we can address the green and sustainability requirements that the EU is putting on organizations, that organizations are trying to promote as part of their value. So if we get it right and we can move from those IT operations based in a physical data center and move it to a hyperscaler environment, we can do two things. We can pick up on that agility and that value, but also tick the sustainability box. So,
Stephen, sorry, just one question in between. What are the main obstacles for sustainability in the local data center? Is it the underusage of systems, or is it the not the right technology, not the right water coolers, no renewable electricity available, and things like that?
So it's a multifaceted challenge, and you're right. Organizations can move from traditional energy supply sources to renewable. You could put up a big wind turbine. You can use a lot of solar, but the data centers in many cases are starting to become older. Particularly the DR data center, where you've got two data centers and the primary one you invest in and you spend time on, the disaster recovery data center often falls behind. What we also see, and you've highlighted it, is that people use the technology for a bit longer than perhaps it's useful for. From an energy perspective, AMD and Intel, every time they do a rev on their generations, the power consumption goes down by a third. So hardware is a big part of the discussion, and the actual data center. And then finally, and something that VMware's been in the market for a long time, is that idea of using that asset as efficiently as possible. And what we find is that you can increase the VM density, you can get more workloads onto a particular platform, and therefore you can start doing incremental things to improve the sustainability. But a move to one of the hyperscaler data centers or a T-Systems data center will give you a much bigger impact more quickly and help you provide that external view that you are looking at the problem, you're addressing it, and you're on a journey towards a much more sustainable environment.
Okay.
So if we think about the transformation of the applications, some of the challenges that we're going to bump into are highlighted here. One of the things that is very obvious is the use of different tools in the on-premise environment and in the hyperscaler cloud. Looking at development, at engineering in the different environments will require different skill sets, and often that's a challenge. But if we go back and look at some data from, in this case, IBM, and on the right-hand side, Gartner, you can see that the two key drivers are moving from a data center, either for sustainability or for cost or agility, as the audience have highlighted. So people want to get out of that data center. But on the left-hand side, you can see that the applications that run the business, in many cases, will continue to run the business. That finance system, that manufacturing system will continue to run the business. And what's happening is that the new applications are being developed cloud native, but it's going to take a while for those foundational applications to change. And that really represents the opportunity that we're looking at here today. So from VMware's perspective, what we've done is we've worked very closely with the hyperscalers, with AWS, with Oracle, with Azure, in order to create an environment where we can get the agility of the hyperscaler environment. So OpEx, access to systems when we need them, but we've made it possible to retain your existing VMware environment. So now VMs and containers can move almost seamlessly between a T-Systems data center, between your data center in your own environment, and the public cloud. So with something called VMware Cloud Foundation, VMs and containers can move between the hyperscaler, a traditional data center, and now increasingly we're also looking at the edge. So things like retail environments or factories or warehouses, we can run those VM applications and those container applications and have that portability and the ability to move between those different environments. How that plays out, and you may have experienced it already, is that if you've got applications in your existing data center and you're thinking about moving them to the hyperscaler, it throws up a lot of choice. And that choice means that you have to decide on how you're going to do things. So things like how many subscriptions, what kind of connections, security tools often come up. So, in that move from on-premise to the hyperscaler, there are a load of decisions and things that potentially could block that migration. And typically that involves a much more extended migration period. 18, 36 months is typical in order to move some of the applications. To move all of the applications is much harder. And often you find that the business case was predicated on moving quickly and it actually slows down. And really what we're looking at here today is that ability to use the collaboration between VMware and AWS to move those applications exactly as they are, as VMs, from one VMware environment into another VMware environment. It just happens to be running in an AWS data center. So AWS data. Sorry, Thomas?
Just one question concerning who is driving that. Is it there's this business sponsors? Is this on your slide? Are these the business units that are driving this, or is it the IT that wants get at most of their workload into the cloud because it's getting out of hand over the years?
In many cases, it's a combination. So I've seen customers where the board have made a decision to move to the hyperscaler. And I mentioned down at the bottom there an EDP, an enterprise discount program. So they've made a commitment that they're going to move the data center within 3 years, for example. And the IT team then start to work alongside that and start to look at moving those applications. But they get bogged down. They find it difficult to actually make that move and to move those applications because of the changes that you have to make, the decisions that have to be made. And so therefore, the combination of the business sponsor recognizing that we can move the application as is into a VMware environment in AWS and it will continue to operate and continue to run. But now we can use the agility and the flexibility that is part of a hyperscaler environment. And the IT team are very supportive because they continue to operate a VMware environment. It looks very familiar, and we'll see in the second presentation, some of the screenshots, but it looks just like a VMware environment on premise. So from an IT perspective, they can continue to operate and they can get access to the new services. So things like the artificial intelligence services or the new database services. So it's a win-win for both the business and for IT, but it can be achieved much more quickly.
Is the shortage of skilled IT people also an argument for using this, because you don't need cloud architects or cloud enterprise specialists to move your workloads?
It's certainly part of the conversation. So for different sectors within the market, things like public sector often find it difficult to attract the right skills because those skills are very expensive. So the combination of having a familiar environment and the ability to continue to use the skills that you have in-house and then work alongside a partner like T-Systems to provide that guidance around how to use the VMware cloud environment efficiently, that can really support the migration.
Okay. Thank you.
So what we're talking about is kind of highlighted here, and we'll delve a bit deeper into it in the second presentation. But effectively, you can think about this left-hand box, the private cloud, as being your existing environment with compute, with storage, with networking. And what we're able to do is to extend that into the AWS data center and continue to have that same VMware environment, but now just on hardware that's hosted within the AWS data center. So it looks exactly the same. You're not going to have to make any changes to the application. It will continue to operate in exactly the same way. So it's a bit like a change control request. But what you do get in that AWS data center is access to all of those hundreds of services that AWS now provide. So if that traditional application needs a new front end, or it wants to take advantage of AI services, it's a simple network connection between the VMware environment that is running in the AWS data center and those AWS services that are being hosted in the same data center or in another region. So it's very easy to get access and refresh the application. One, because you're going to be on more modern hardware, it's going to be more sustainable and more efficient, and you're going to be able to quickly take advantage of sentiment, chatbots, serverless technologies, new database technologies. So it's very beneficial to organizations.
Stephen, one quick question. Is there a danger of VM sprawl? Sometimes we talk about that because it's now so easy. It's easy to deploy new VMs, and people are tempted to fire them off for not the best reasons.
So the answer to that question is kind of multifaceted. So really what we see quite often on premise is, because when you request a VM, it can be quite challenging to get it provisioned, get the network connectivity, and spin it up. Developers and application owners will hold on to VMs that are no longer being used. It was required for a test or a development phase, and it's no longer being used. So to an extent, you almost get VM sprawl in the classic data center, and in the more modern AWS-based environment, because we're starting to move, and we mentioned it earlier on, that kind of FinOps model, and you're able to use automation in that modern environment more efficiently to spin up when you need and spin them down when you don't need, we actually see that the VM sprawl goes down, and you're able to control costs more effectively, and you're able to react to workload requirements. The Christmas peak, or we've just had Black Friday. So what we're able to do is to address VM sprawl and to automate it and to manage it much more efficiently.
And it also adds to sustainability then, when fewer VMs are used, or when only that VMs are used that are really necessary.
Exactly. So some of the projects I've worked on, because I've worked for a service provider, when we look at the existing data center environment, we can find that 25-30% of the VMs are doing no useful work. They're being backed up, they're being copied onto new storage, but it's VMs that people have just hung on to. So we can eliminate those. We can move them into the new environment and increase the density. We can get more value from the platform in the new environment, and then that's being hosted in an AWS data center, much more efficient. Often in a hyperscaler's data center, you're looking at a PUE of around 1 to 1.3. A customer data center is often up in the 4 and the 5. So there was a study done by a European organization for the EU called Eureka, and they tested customer data centers, and their PUE was between 4 and 5. So that's the power utilization efficiency.
Very bad, yeah.
Yeah.
And it will also be a problem in Germany. There's, I don't know whether the law is already in effect. New data centers are required to have a low POE. They must certify themselves that they are using energy efficiently.
And this is one of the ways that VMC can be used to provide that quick efficiency gain by moving from an on-premise data center into a VMware environment in AWS. So, we're going to look at it in a second, but often when we think about those servers in the data center, we're thinking about running hundreds or thousands of VMs. But you as a customer may want to start with a small platform to test it out, and then when confident, move to hundreds or thousands of VMs. So with VMware Cloud Director, and we'll look at it in the second presentation, we can create a multi-tenanted environment where you can start small and grow, but start realizing the value of the hyperscaler environment. So to give you a flavor of, one of the customers where we've worked successfully, GfK had a situation where they had an old inefficient data center, so they were incurring the power costs, not very sustainable, but they wanted to take advantage of the hyperscaler to address that, but also to look at data analysis. So starting to dip into those artificial intelligence services. And so really that move to VMware Cloud on AWS ticked a number of boxes as far as they were concerned. It improved the cost benefit ratio, and it allowed them to start being innovative on the applications that they were using to do market research, moving from those classic kind of clipboard filling out questionnaires into a much more interactive phone-based, iPad, web-based environment. So it was easier for people that wanted to complete the market research to fill out the forms, and it provided more data to the organization. So if we think about, the parties involved in this webinar, we've been working with T-Systems for many years. So you can see, 15 plus years as a principal partner of VMware. They have a VMware Cloud Verified platform, and they're managing many thousands of VMs on behalf of clients. VMware and AWS also have had a long-standing relationship. We launched the VMware Cloud on AWS way back in 2016. So, we've been working together to build this innovation, to create this agile environment where you get the benefits of the cloud, but you're able to use those existing workloads. So you're able to bring those applications that are running in your existing VMware environment, move them over the weekend into a VMC environment, into VMware Cloud on AWS. And then you're able to take advantage of some of those services. So we've seen partners that use it as a gateway. If you're moving SAP into S/4HANA, this can be that bridge. If you're looking at those legacy applications that plug into that foundation application, they may have to continue as VMs. So hopefully that's given you a flavor of how you can use the platform.
I think that's an important advantage because SAP is motivating all their customers to move to S/4HANA, and a lot of them are still really reluctant to do this. Yeah.
And what we've seen is that SAP and Microsoft Dynamics, it's an integration platform. A lot of other applications sit around it that will have to continue as VMs. I had one where it was a recipe application and it couldn't move to a native cloud environment. It had to stay as a VM.
Okay. Well, thank you, Stephen, for the overview. Before we start with Jaroslav's presentation, we would like to ask you, dear audience, how many VMs are you currently running in the cloud? Are there none? You're still in the beginning, a few, less than 100, more than 100, more than 1,000 maybe. We would be interested in your environment in the cloud of virtual machines. You can answer without worry. This is a complete anonymous poll. We can't see who answered or who gave which answer. Stephen, do companies really have an overview of how many VMs they have in the cloud?
That's one of the interesting things. Again, I've worked with customers and with partners to help address that. In many cases, I had one customer where they had a CMDB, the classic spreadsheet that IT ran the environment from, and then the emotional, I think we've got hundreds, reality we had thousands. So it is a challenge on premise. And then when you go up to the hyperscaler environment, different departments have different access. So it is something that people need to get their arms around. And with a FinOps approach, you can certainly do that. And helping people understand the value of the VM. Why is it there? What work is it doing? What value does it bring to the business? And therefore you can justify the cost of it, whether that's on premise or in the cloud.
Are there technologies or applications or services that can help to get this overview? I think of a cloud access service broker, for example. Is that a method to get more insight in the cloud usage?
So that's certainly one of the applications you can use, and certainly VMware has a tool to support that. The ARIA operations tool, which is part of this solution that T-Systems has created, can help you get a view of your existing VMware environment on premise. And then, we've got a tool called Cloud Health that helps us achieve the same in the hyperscaler environment. So you can tap into the APIs available from Azure, from AWS, from Oracle, and that will give you the information. So I had one customer, US, AWS, Europe, Azure, and they wanted to consolidate. So we pulled the information together so that they could drive the maximum value from the hyperscaler.
Okay. Let's have a look at the votes of our audience. We have a lot of our viewers have more than 1,000 VMs currently running in the cloud. They are really experienced already in using the cloud. The others are rather distributed. I don't know, about a fifth says I don't know, which we discussed a moment ago, and the rest is sprawled between the other. Yaroslav, is this typical for your customers, that they have already thousands of VMs in the cloud?
Yeah, maybe it's as well a private cloud, or maybe
we didn't ask whether it's in a private or in a hyperscale cloud.
Yeah, but maybe it's as well important thing that okay, most of the VMs are already in the cloud, but there are some leftovers. Yeah, there are some leftovers causing headaches, and thinkings and creating projects how to move them out, because you can run down the data center if it's totally empty. Yeah, if you have 5, 10, 20 leftovers, you have to still keep it running. So maybe we will cause some relief.
Usage and PoE gets even worse if you have only a few.
So the economics is somewhere south with such a data center. So maybe we can help and provide some relief with our VMC Flex solution for those customers.
Okay, so please give us an insight in VMC Flex and we'll see how it works.
Yeah, so thanks for the word. Let me start with some short introduction into VMware Cloud and AWS Flex, our solution provided by T-Systems. So in order to have a better idea what it is behind, because someone said that there is no cloud, there is just someone else's computer. So let me make it some links into the physical layer. So our VMC Flex is consolidated or structured with this 3 layers. First one is the physical one. So of course there are some servers, there are some physical networks. Those are provided by AWS. So probably the biggest cloud provider in the world, with the biggest data centers and compute power, with their own hardware, with their own network stack. So a lot of engineering is in there, thus has a trust of millions of customers around the globe. Onto this physical layer, there is of course virtualization layer. It's a different comparing to AWS EC2 instances, because this virtualization layer is provided by VMware. As you already know from your data centers, you have the virtualization layer is ESXi and vSphere, and on that cornerstone, this solution is built. It's called VMware Cloud on AWS. This is composed of, as you can see, it's vSphere, vSAN, and NSX. However, this layer is a single tenant. It does not provide multi-tenancy. In order to provide multi-tenancy, so the resources can be shared, however, with isolation, we deployed a cloud layer, which is based on VMware Cloud Director Service. So this is as well operated or managed by VMware, but we are the ones who deploy it, configure, and make it portal consumable by our customers. This one will connect and merge all the three layers together, so it will give you reasonable and consumable service, which we call VMC Flex. As with the previous poll, most of you are demanding the flexibility that's matching with as well our product name, and it brings that flexibility to the customers. What we have on the left and right side? On the left side is your private cloud or on-prem data center. We have just small link in between, which is VCDA, and I will talk later about it. It's a VMware Cloud Director availability, the tool which may brings you, as Stefan said, over the weekend, for example, depend on your workload, into the cloud, into a hyperscaler cloud. On the right side, we have Amazon Web Services. This, as already mentioned, provides cloud-native services. You can link your legacy environment still running on VMware platform with native services in AWS and consume it, whether it's AI or S3 storage, or maybe load balancer or security we've been talking before. It's all achievable and consumable from AWS as a cloud-native service.
Just one question, Jaroslav, concerning the local data centers. Can you assess the percentage that is run as a private cloud and the percentage that is run in a classical server, siloed, structured way?
I would say most of it. It's on-prem data centers. Hard to say how far it is, how far are the customers with the private cloud implementation, whether they behave to it as a cloud, but mostly from the experience, it's.
Oh, I think Jaroslav has left the building, but he's back. Sorry, you were back for a second.
Yeah, thanks for bridging that. My absence. So yes, so I think mostly it's private data centers of the customers where they are still running on vSphere, maybe running end of life of the hardware on the vSphere versions as well, because it's very competitive to keep up with the support matrices, and probably you all know it, how hard it is to maintain firmware version, hypervisor version, hardware age, and so on. So this may be a relief as well to move it out and work on, let's say, more sensitive work, which brings either more efficient business to your companies or new technologies, which will move the company in a business area as well.
Yeah, and also it is the skill shortage we discussed earlier, because people have hands-free from daily routine repetitive tasks. They can do real transformative work and better work.
Especially for customers using a Cloud Director on-prem, this is like no change at all. Yeah, okay. So the portal looks very same, and they will find everything where it should be. So it's very easy then to move on to VMC Flex. Okay, let's have a look on features. What does it bring? We know the structure, what it is composed of. The main features, just a few points, as I was talking before, it's a multi-tenant solution, so that's why it's called Flex. You don't need to pre-order any hardware. It is shared. However, it brings that flexibility. You can deploy VMs when you need it. And thanks to the fast time of that deployment, as we were talking about the leftovers, VMs without ownership, if the developers have the possibility to deploy VMs in a very short time and use it for time where effectively needed, I think they will be more tend to remove them after they are not necessary anymore. For example, even for the weekend or for a week when they are not needed, can be automatically removed. This, as we were talking about, the FinOps will bring the benefit as we bill our customers per hour per VM. So we bill only runtime of the virtual machines. No resources are pre-allocated, or that we need to do some, let's say, resource management. What you consume is what you pay. If you would like to optimize it, you may run or you may power off the test systems, for example, during the holidays or the weekends. You have as well very good portability, so you can bring your virtual machines from your on-prem location via the VMware Cloud Director Availability. That's the tool we offer. It offers pretty straightforward replication of the data and then cutover of the virtual machine into the cloud. With our enhanced Magenta services, you will get service desk, incident management. So that's probably more for IT, CIO, or managers to stay calm and rely that, however, it's a hyperscale cloud, will still offer ITIL with it. So you can rely on standard processes. With regard.
Sorry, I have one question concerning the multi-tenancy. How are the customers isolated? Is there one problem that's often discussed is noisy neighbor? If you have someone who is very active in the same infrastructure, it kills your performance. Do you address these issues?
Yeah, so noisy neighbor situation, the isolation coming from Cloud Director is here with us ages. So the Cloud Director is now on version 10.5, and it's pretty, I would say, major solution, keeping the clients or tenants next to each other. Noisy neighbor on the resource perspective with the CPU or memory, this is the unlikely situation that could happen, because the vSphere engines like DRS are taking care. We are keeping the infrastructure not overcommitted. Yeah, so we really do the monitoring. We even evaluated how is the hardware usage going on, and as well some of that is coming with the VMC itself. So VMware Cloud and AWS has it's called EDRS when the hosts are added if the cluster is overloaded. So having that possibility as for us as a provider, we can have a new hardware on our fingertips. So to provision new hosts is a question about to have it there and to serve to our customers. So you don't have to have that fear that the cluster will be overcommitted. And it will be our intention to, get every single penny out of it, because it's very easy to add new hosts, even for peak hours or peak days on a seasonal basis. So from that perspective, it's very unlikely that the noisy neighbor situation could happen.
Thank you.
And the last point here is the Terraform, as we were talking about the developers, and they can use the infrastructure as a code approach and integrate the infrastructure deployment within their code testing. So for example, they can deploy 5, 10 virtual machines from templates with the configuration, run the code testing, run the application. If they are happy, they can run it down in a few hours. And it works well. We as well are using a Terraform for some platform components to build it up. So we have experience, and yeah, I can just recommend it to use it. About the availability, so whether your business is running globally or it is running in some particular locations and you would like to have your data and your compute near to your offices or your customers, you can choose from up to 24 AWS regions around the globe. Not all of them are marked on the map, so it's growing always, which is very good. And you can really choose where the compute will resist. It will begin with some discussion with us. So if your workload is good enough and big enough to deploy into a new location, we can start pretty soon. However, the Cloud Director service, your portal, is running in 4 locations out of it, but it's only portal. Your resources may sit up to 150 milliseconds from the portal location. So really, it's globally available thanks to AWS infrastructure, having a data centers around the globe, and VMware providing VMC in those locations. We can as well offer VMC Flex globally for our customers.
One question, Yaroslav.
Mm-hmm.
Are there price differences between the regions?
There are slight price differences from AWS within different regions. However, it's having a multiple layers, as you saw above. So I think that should not have impact for the end customers.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so the story of Acme. Acme is our mock-up company where we basically create to proof test the platform, whether it has the features. We consolidated the usual or especially unusual requests from our customers from different platforms, put it all into this Acme, and make the story on which we built our platform. So we know our customers are living businesses. It's not a PowerPoint presentation that you mostly see as well here. So your requirements may be different than the product itself may offer. So the story is that this Acme company is running in their own data center, running the end-of-life infrastructure, considering whether to refresh it, reinvest into the hardware, or the cloud is knocking on the door. The executive board of the company made a decision that they will move to AWS cloud, so they will not invest anymore and refresh the hardware. So that's like executive decision, which caused, let's say, headaches to the IT department because they know their application are really dependent on VMware ecosystem, especially they are using some tooling for the virtual machines, which is not working with EC2 instances. The time is short. The decision was made to do it within a financial year, and they have, let's say, months or weeks to do that migration, to that flip over to AWS cloud. So before VMware started with AWS, it was barely a headache for the companies and for the ITs, causing very expensive projects to run and to convert as much as possible to AWS with performance issues maybe. So with VMC Flex, it's rather easy. You can use it as a transfer station to AWS, doing hop on, hop off, and stay on VMware platform in AWS world, and then decide how fast you will convert your applications into AWS Cloud Native. So you can do it application by application with small project teams and not overkilling it with some investments.
One question, Jaroslav. Is it also good for security to use this approach? Because I read cloud misconfiguration is one of the three main security risks in the cloud. So if you have to do it by yourself, the possibility that you do something wrong is rather big.
So it always depends on your, let's say, internet breakout, where it is. You can keep it on-prem for the time being. For example, if you have no time to re-engineer it for the cloud, and you can just move the compute and storage into the VMC Flex cloud and route the internet traffic through the on-prem. If you use Palo Alto or some security devices, you can still use it, and then rethink how to move it into the cloud, whether you will do some internet breakout in AWS native world, or you would just use standard internet breakout and create sophisticated firewall rules. Another thing with security, you have a distributed firewall in a VMC Flex, so you can secure not only internet breakout, but as well communication between the virtual machines. This is very good feature you have in there, and security is not in a single point. The security should be all around the infrastructure. So this is a benefit you can have. Few words about our Cloud Director Availability tool. So this is migration tool, but you can use it as well for the disaster recovery. You can replicate the data of your virtual machines into the cloud, and then once it is having problems or your on-prem infrastructure has some difficulties, you can switch it over to the cloud environment, and it will continue from that snapshot which was replicated. It's great tool for migration because you will prepare your networks upfront with routing, firewall rules, and so you can test it with test virtual machine, that everything is prepared, and then you can bring your production of VMs into the environment, into the pre-configured networks. The customer UI is accessible from the Cloud Director portal, so it's really at your fingertips, and it is very I could really recommend to do the proof of concept testing before the migration, move some VMs. You can really see how easy it is. So maybe you would reconsider that you don't even need some migration specialist for that easy virtual machines.
Just one quick info, Jaroslav, we have 5 minutes left.
Yeah, that's good. That was few words about the migration tool. Then we have some options with the traditional workloads, how to handle them. We call it mode 1. It's you can either keep them where they are. So probably some of the VMs you still even in your on-prem data center, rest is already moved to AWS or to some other cloud. You can even re-platform them. So for example, as we were talking today about moving from your on-prem data center to VMC Flex solution. So they are staying on the vSphere platform on the VMware virtualization, but in a different data center. Or you can choose multi-tier hybrid, so you can shift some of the portions. So if your application have multiple tiers, some of the tiers may run in a cloud native service, some may still require to run in VMware environment. Approach for mode 2, it's a cloud native applications. So after, let's say, your lift and shift phase, you are already in AWS cloud. You can choose to refactor some of the applications to maybe start with easy application and then move to more complex, or you may just remain them where they are and develop new versions of the application directly as a cloud native, or probably you will find as well some already out of the box solution from software as a service vendor where you can switch. So just a few views of the user interface. For those who are already familiar with the Cloud Director service, you will see that's really a UI, very simple. You see the, let's say, some resources you have in your virtual data center. You see your virtual applications called VApps that may contain virtual machines with slight overview of what's inside, how much resources it consumes, whether it's up or down, who created that. And then you have Edge Gateway, which will provide your network connectivity outside to the internet. And as you can see, it has firewall, NAT, VPNs, and you can configure routing. So a lot of features from network perspective you can have from VMware in here on your fingertips. So thank you for being here, for participating on my presentation.
Thanks a lot, Jaroslav. We have still 2 minutes left, so there's time for questions. So please, if you want to know something from our speakers of today, please ask now. I would like to know, Stephen, as I said in the beginning, a lot of companies are still planning or discussing the migration to the public cloud. What are the main barriers do you see?
So the main barriers to moving to the cloud is normally the applications, because people think that they have to change them. And the reality is that they don't. If it runs as a VM currently, so, I work a lot with public sector and with government organizations, and they've still got applications that run on Server 2008, on XP desktops, and you can continue to run those. Where the value of the hyperscaler is those new innovative services and the changing way that you consume the services. So the agility, the flexibility, consumption, all of those kinds of things. And therefore, if you can, as we saw there, the mode 1, get those applications into the hyperscaler environment, use those benefits, and then in many cases that can fund the new applications that change the customer experience and change the interaction between organizations, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. So the perceived barrier can be overcome with this solution. Okay, Jaroslav, what are the plans with VMC Flex? What is T-Systems planning for the future? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so next milestone on our roadmap is bringing some services on top of what VMware offers as a standard. And the next one is backup as a service. So we would like to provide, again, a self-service portal for the customer where they will be able to create the backup policies for their VMs. They will be able to do the restores, have reports from the backups for the audits, and so on.
Okay, thank you. Well, if there are no further questions from the audience, I would like to conclude. We've seen VMC Flex is a very valuable possibility to overcome the barriers we talked about just a moment ago, and to move to the cloud, to AWS in this case, very fast and smooth and without worries about refactoring, replatforming, or new development. Thank you for the presentation, Stephen and Jaroslav. Thank you, dear audience, for the interest and for participating in the polls. That's it for today. Goodbye. I wish you a very good day.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.